is being heard. And this is called the principle of audi alteram partem. Don't have to remember the Latin version, but being heard. Okay? That is the first facet of justice. When you are in a court and two parties are arguing, it's only fair when you pass a judgment or use your official capacity to impact the lives of the people or the parties only after both the sides are heard. This is point number one. Point number two. Can a party who is there in that conflict pass a judgment in this case? Nobody is allowed to be a judge of their own case. This is the second principle. To be the judge of their own case. Correct? This two facets together constitute the idea of natural justice. Natural justice is a framework of thought which wants to treat any conflict fairly, because the underlying assumptions or the underlying principles govern how human beings think, and it is so natural to us that it cannot be questioned. Right? It is illogical to question this two assumptions, and that's why they're called the principles of natural justice. In an individual versus the state, the social contract, do you think these principles apply? These principles apply or not? No. How many of you think it's a no? How many of you think it's no? If they don't apply, let's say state unilaterally imposes a rule and you are not even being heard, you are getting impacted. The state says, see, for example, police represent, the institution of police represent the state. They go to an individual and say, you are a murderer, and you are not heard, you are thrown in jail and you are put to death sentence. Is it fair? Now tell me, is it applicable in a relation between individual and the state? Yes or no? Yes. Nobody is allowed to be the judge of their own case. Same example. Police says that this person has murdered. Can the police themselves absolve of their accusation and say that whatever we are saying is right? Obviously no. Can an individual decide that no, they are making a false accusation and they should not be allowed to do that, so it is wrong? Can they say that? If you are a part of the conflict, how can you decide? You obviously feel like you are right, and that's why conflict is happening. Now apply this thinking to the conversation between Election Commission of India and a voter whose name is taken out of the list. You are a voter whose name is out of the list. Now you are not a part of the list, voter list. What does it essentially mean? You do not have any say in this democracy. Party B here is the Election Commission of India, which said that I am deleting your name. What is the argument of Election Commission here? What are they saying? They'll say that, boss, we gave you some time. We asked you to provide some documents. You are not providing it, so we'll remove it. Now the question is it addressed to an individual? Is it, say, for example, Vikas? We are speaking from Election Commission of India. We are writing this letter to seek documentation. Please see if there are any of these 11 documents to prove your voter ID and enfranchisement. Otherwise, your name will be removed from the list. Did you send any individualized notice like this? No, you just put it in a public newspaper which nobody reads, and said that if you don't come to the booth level and submit your documents, we will remove your vote. What if the person did not see the newspaper on that day because of some issue? So it means that their opportunity is gone. Right? Now, does this feel fair? It is not fair on this parameter itself. I deserve to be represented in a court, or I deserve to be heard. See, you raised a discrepancy and said that there is something wrong. At least I deserve to give an explanation as to why I think that I am right or wrong. I might be having that document, or I might not be having that document, but do it after informing me, and that is the right thing to do, and that is justice. Right? How do we describe our country as? The nature of democracy is democracy, sovereign, secular, socialist, democratic republic. That is how we describe our country. What is the first principle on which you can say India is a democratic country? Free and fair election. So this free and fair election is under question, under threat, because the principles of natural justice, audi alteram partem, which is a you don't have to remember this, but just whenever you hear this word, understand that it is about natural justice. This is a legal terminology. One of the very first point that you will read in law classes, like if you are doing LLB. So, now, who should protect the constitution, the principles? Guardian, Supreme Court. Now read the article. Published names of the 65 lakh excluded voters. Demands Supreme Court from Election Commission of India. The bench wants full list of excluded Bihar electors to be published with specific reasons. It says voters are not included in the draft roll can file their objections by applying with a copy of their Aadhaar. Did Election Commission of India allow Aadhaar? Now, does this mean that Supreme Court is involving itself? Yesterday you were asking, is this judicial activism, or is this judicial overreach? Now tell me, is this overreach or activism? Activism. What is the difference between an overreach and activism? See, when legislatures are doing their job properly by following the due process of law, then judiciary need not involve. Is judiciary making law and passing? No. It is directing the government bodies, the constitutional bodies, to behave according to the principles established in the constitution. What is the first job of Election Commission? To ensure that everybody, or as many as possible, is included in the process of democracy, not exclude them. You are acting by structural logic itself, you are going against the very purpose with which you are existing. So this is a structural disenfranchisement. Please note this word down. Structural disenfranchisement. But no, that we have already discussed that Aadhaar is not a proof of citizenship. But having said that, do you have a proof of citizenship in this country? That is the contradiction.
On what basis can they exclude? Because the constitution talks about any citizen who has attained age of 18 years is eligible to be a voter.
Correct.
So what is the basis of them removing these people from the
Election Commission, you mean? Yeah, that's the reason why Supreme Court asked. On what metrics are you saying that? See, there is a list of 11 documents It includes birth certificate, where you have to register your birth at the and then come up with this. So voter ID card, previously by default we assume it as a proof of citizenship. But if you want to get a voter card, birth certificate. What if you don't have an institutional delivery, or if you did not register your birth, even if the child is born at home, you are not aware that you have to register your birth. Let's say 10 years later you decided that you have to register your birth. Now you are not sure if you are born in 2002 or 2000 or 1998 or 2004. You'll roughly calculate the age, whatever is comfortable to you, and register. Ideally, it is the responsibility of the state to do all this. Why are you putting the burden on citizens? Why not mandate registering every birth and death? Don't you think it's the responsibility of the government? It is. But is it actually happening in reality? No. Why? We don't have an answer. Now you come back to a state which has a per capita income of 55,000, nearly half of India's national average, where most of the people migrate. They don't have higher school education. Problems like casteism persist, where identity politics play a very major role. And in that kind of a society where democracy is even more needed, you are going to say 65 lakh voters should be excluded. Is it fair? By any standards, what is the intent of this whole activity? To remove illegal votes. Is it desirable? Yes, of course it's desirable. But is the due process clear? The very first step, voters should be recognized, is based on the idea that for every citizen you have one vote. But who is a citizen here? We don't have an idea. We don't have an answer. That's exactly the point Supreme Court is asking. On what metric did you say that these documents are accepted, others are not accepted? You should allow the other parties to be heard. See, just like in history, if you don't have a conclusive evidence, we try to reconstruct history and give a benefit of doubt. Let's say you have no written record that so and so person existed in this time period. But what if you find a inscription? You may not find that in a book written by some famous poet of that time, but you find an inscription describing a person with certain qualities. You corroborate it with archaeological evidence, reconstruct the history, and then established, okay, there might have been a person like this. You are giving a benefit of doubt. If you can give history so much benefit of doubt, we are talking about the present day reality. We are talking about people who do not have access to a square meal, proper nutritious food, and you are putting the burden of proof on this kind of population without even hearing them, without giving any alternative path. You are completely alienating them from democratic process. It is possible that ECI is right. There might have been indeed 65 lakh voters who are fake. But is this the method? Is this the due process of law that you should follow to remove people? No. You have to give people the benefit of doubt, because the very democratic logic says include as many people as possible, so that better representation is taken care. This will be, if this is right, okay. But what if this is wrong? If even one eligible voter is excluded from this list, it is a threat to the democratic processes. You might be wondering, it's only one vote, how much of a difference will it make? What if someday you come to a realization that at least 60-70% of the voters here are eligible, but they were excluded, and an election happened, And in those 5 years, the destiny of that state has transformed forever in a way that does not represent a democratic voice. That is the importance of due process of law, following the principles of natural justice, and that's why the beauty of this constitution can be seen in things like this. Judiciary is such a powerful organ. It has its own set of problems. I'm not trying to say everything is flowery and rosy and things are great there. It has got its own set of problems. Judicial pendency. We have nearly 3 crore cases pending in various levels of courts. Supreme Court judges take a holiday, summer holidays. They go on a vacation. And if your case is languishing in courts for almost a decade or even more, you'll have to wait until the judges finish their vacation. Can we do that for governance? Can the disaster management authority deny taking action during floods because they're on a vacation? Then what makes judiciary think that it is okay to take a vacation? Of course they're overburdened. Who is asking them to carry all the burden? Why not increase the strength of the bench or increase the number of judges, increase the infrastructure? If they can direct the courts the legislative houses to make laws on that, why not fix their own issues? But this is the beauty, like at least there is some level of accountability, and we should hope that arbitrary actions will not see the light of the day without judicial scrutiny. Clear? This example is can be used in your ethics also. How about that harm principle? What is that harm principle? Yeah. See, at the heart of the legal dispute over this special intensive revision of the electoral roll, the principle of natural justice, hearing out a person before deciding a case is at harm, to cause harm. So, the harm principle says that if a judicial action is causing harm, it better be according to the due process of law and the procedure established by law, in both procedural aspect as well as the spirit of the law. That is the importance of following procedures, rules and laws. Clear? Fine. Is it audible? Yeah. See, in this, I want you to take a look at this. Supreme Court in Lal Babu Hussain versus ERO, a 1995 case law, which is the focus of the current hearing, had divided electors into 2 categories. First time, see, this can be asked in prelims. That's why I am focusing here. 2 categories: first time electors and existing electors. Please take down the name of this case. Lal Babu Hussain versus ERO. There are 2 categories of voters: first time electors and existing electors. What is the significance here? The Supreme Court held EC is not wrong to demand evidence of Indian citizenship from first time electors. So what is the point of contention? It is not from first time electors. Now there are existing electors. Let's say, for example, I have a voter card. On what basis did you give me a voter card? You did not ask a proof for the first time. I just gave one some certificate or something, but now it's gone. Not able to produce one. I lost my certificate. I applied. There is a procedural delay there. They are not giving me a certificate. I did not submit on time. Can you say, or I'm not even aware that I'm supposed to submit again. I will assume that it is only for first time electors. Now that you come and say that even existing voters should give the documents, did you ask everyone? Are you aware that something like this is happening? Maybe, maybe not. So, if you are a first time voter, when you want to give a voter card, when you submit an application, it's fair. You ask the proof. Fine. We all produced our 10th class certificates, which is considered a good enough proof. Because 10th class certificate or birth certificate is considered a proof of citizenship. Now you are getting a voter card. I got one. Now I lost it. Or I lost my certificate or birth certificate. Whatever the original document that I submitted, I lost it. So, will you remove my name? Was I heard? My argument will be, I was given a voter card. What changed now? Why are you taking my name away? I'm not even heard. Okay. So, Supreme Court did not object. Please look at the logic. If I am demanding documents from the first timers, that is a usual process. There is nothing wrong in it. But I've already registered. I already have my name on the electoral roll. And now you are saying that you should submit again. Why? What were you doing before? Why did you give me a voter card in the first place if you think I'm wrongfully registered? Okay, some mistake happened on the institution part and they gave it away. And you think on the principle of national interest, which is the most important thing. It's the first thing that we should take care of. National interest first, sovereignty first. There might be illegal immigrants who wrongfully got. Is this the process? No, right? So that is what this article is saying. Clear? Everyone? Did you ask me, like, did you send a notice? That is the due process. Every person who is disenfranchised should deserve a minimum intimation of the reason. That is why Supreme Court is asking for a reason of all the list of candidates. 65 lakh voters are removed, right? Why did you remove? On what grounds? Give a reason and explain or justify the steps taken. Yeah, now let's take a look at this. Federal balance is a key democracy indicator. See, this is a politically contested article, but I will tell you metrics of how to frame your arguments on the topic of center-state relations. We have discussed this in the past, but to make sense of this article and see why it is important, let's quickly recap whatever these things we have discussed. Okay? See, firstly, when we are talking about federalism in India, what is federalism? It is a mechanism of giving powers to the states, delegating powers or dividing the powers, division of powers between the national and subnational units. In India, we describe India or Bharat as union of states. So, we have a quasi-federal state, meaning that there is more inclination towards centralization than towards the giving state autonomy. This quasi-federal design has a purpose. What is the purpose? Unity, exactly. Purpose is unity. But unity does not mean uniformity. You cannot take away the essence of different regions in this country by curbing the autonomy they have. So unity is not uniformity. So the subnational units or the states should still get their autonomy, regional autonomy. Why should you give them regional autonomy? Is it administration? It's more about an identity and efficiency. One, identity, and two, efficiency. Now the question is, if this is the desired objective, what constitutional provisions will act as a metric to say this principle is respected? Clear? The answer to this is again found in Lakshmikant, where you will see three different subheadings: administrative, legislative, and financial. So, administration, legislative, and financial. Now, for each of this heading, if you want to make sure that there is a sense of predictability, you need to institutionalize this mechanism. What do I mean by this? If I want money, it is not supposed to be dependent on the whims and fancies of the government at the center. It should not be conditional. I want an unconditional transfer of money, whatever I deserve. For this, do we have a mechanism or not? Finance Commission is there. Now, administrative relations. I want certain level of autonomy, but I also want to maintain unity of this country. What do we have? We have All India services. We have for interstate councils, yes. And even in finance, you have GST Council. Legislative relations. If you want to make sure that the sanctity or the spirit of federalism is maintained, you have checks and balances in the form of existence of Rajya Sabha, which is supposed to be the voice of the states, the center. So, if you look at federalism as a design principle through checks and balances, it ensures regional autonomy, but also ensures that we are a quasi-federal state with an inclination towards center. So there is an element of flexibility as well as rigidity. And we have Schedule 7, which allows for different lists: union list, state list, and concurrent list. Here you also have Supreme Court ruling that this principle is a part of the basic structure. That is, no constitutional amendment can change the intent here of how this national and subnational governments are functioning. You cannot change this through a constitutional amendment. The Kesavananda Bharati case, through the basic structure doctrine and various other subsequent judgments, also reiterated this. Okay? But there are some contentious issues. Let's begin with the most recent ones. It begins with fiscal federalism, or the issue of transfer of money to the states, and how states are not happy after GST came into the picture. Clear? So let me explain briefly about them. When it comes to the finances, what are the various ways in which you will get money? Firstly, you have the Finance Commission transfers, where 41% of all the money that comes into the consolidated fund of India will be distributed according to the formula given by FC. This 41% is also something that was based on Finance Commission formula only. There are some parameters like population, forest area, demographic performance. What do I mean by demographic performance? See, I'll give a context for this. Way back in your 1970s, where the population was exploding, we wanted to reduce our population because it is putting a severe strain on our resources. The governance mechanisms were not able to provide to the growing aspirations of people in such a short span. To control that, we have come up with, two-child policy, something like that, or we have promoted national population policy also was there to control the population by usage of contraceptives or education among the public. And southern states have fared well. There is a concept called TFR. Any idea what this is stand for? Yes, total fertility rate. So there is something called replacement level, meaning if a child-bearing woman can produce some X number of kids to replace the existing population, that number is called the total fertility rate. And that in Indian context is 2.1. If the number comes down, you will have a situation where there are more elder people and it is not replaced by younger population. And on the other hand, in northern states, North India, like let's say for example Bihar or Uttar Pradesh, you have more people, like the total fertility rate is more than 2.1. So migration becomes inevitable for them because they are already poor. Link this to the SIR situation. They don't have enough opportunities, so they travel to the south and work here. In this context, there is a demographic shift. There is conflict. The writer who is talking about this is probably the CM. Is it by the CM? Yeah, CM of Tamil Nadu, and even Pinarayi Vijayan, Kerala. So they were also talking about this same federal design. The issue is this: in Finance Commission formula, there is this population control, but southern states are fearing that they will be penalized even further if they don't raise their voice. So the amount that they are giving to the center through GST, for example, I don't remember the exact figures, but let's say if let's say a state, southern state is giving 15 rupees, roughly they are getting a fraction of this return, like say for example 2 rupees. So revenue is generated from here, but only some part of it is coming back. And this is justified by the center saying that India is a union of states. It is not a federation in its truest sense. So regional inequalities should be curbed, and taxation is one way that can be achieved. But can you contain the dissatisfaction here? It's becoming difficult. Previously, this debate was not raised by politicians primarily because in the absence of GST, states had more taxation powers. But a lot of businesses felt that this taxation, lack of uniformity in taxation, was a huge harassment from respective governments. Now that is gone. And today in the Independence Day speech, the Prime Minister promised that we will simplify the GST rates further, making it easier for people to afford them. And also the businesses will feel happier about it. In all the setup, there is a rising conflict. On one hand, states are not getting enough funds. They do not have enough taxation powers after GST. Funds are politicized now, according to the writer. So, for example, if they want more money according to Article 293, states are not going to get loans without center approval if they have a pre-existing loan. No single state in this country will not have a loan already. They must have taken some loan. Now, when you don't have the ability to generate revenue, because you are left with only one or two options, like say for example excise, okay, or very municipality tax, like property tax or something, that too at local government level, not at the state level. Agricultural income is not taxable. You will only get state GST share, but sometimes that is also not enough, right? So in this setup, when your revenues are falling down, there are some states like Bihar which want to go for complete prohibition of liquor. Where will they generate revenue from? So the conflict is increasing, and Article 293, Article 280, Finance Commission and all the existing provisions should be understood. Are we following the due processes established in law? In financial relations, one more problem is there: cess. What is cess? It's a tax on tax. What is surcharge? Tax on tax on tax. Is it tax on tax on tax? Or is it different? It's only earmarked for, let's say, education cess. If we are imposing education cess, it is supposed to be spent only for education, right? If it is earmarked for health, it is only for health. Okay, so the other day when we were reading about this CAG report, so if the money falls into the Consolidated Fund of India under the public account, you have to transfer from from Consolidated Fund to public account. Under this, you will have some, let's say for example, an escrow account for education, for health, or for whatever purpose that the government is spending. So for example, if you are having a cess on construction workers, it should go to that respective account only. You cannot use it for any other purpose. Recently, the CAG report said that from 1970 until 1994 or something, out of the 2 lakh odd crores collected, only a fraction of it was transferred to the public account, and there is no account of what happened to the remaining cesses. We are talking about accounts from 40-50 years. Issues like this persist, and the biggest problem is this amount is taken from the consumer who is residing. Let's say for example, someone in Tamil Nadu is also supposed to pay this, but will Tamil Nadu residents get benefit out of this completely? No. If I am living in Tamil Nadu and I'm paying 4 rupees on a product towards education cess, am I going to get 4 rupees back? No, because it is decided by the center. It is conditional transfer. So financial issues like this persist. Now coming to the legislative relations. Here the bridge between the center and the state is the governor. Okay, and in some areas even administrative issues like All India officers, All India services and their officers, cadre allotment, all these issues persist. In all these metrics, are things smooth? If the answer is yes, federal balance will be there. If the answer is no, it is not a good federal indicator. As simple as that. And on these metrics only you have to argue. Everything else is just political opinion. You can read the article after going back. Okay, it is in this context only. You can read this article also. governors. Is education a state subject, central subject, or concurrent subject? Everything about education. Everything. Let's say if you want to set standards for education, which government will take? Standard setting in education under union list entry number 66. Just check once again. If I'm wrong, just verify once again. In union list, you will have this education regulations standard setting. Let's say how UGC is setting the standards is because of this provision in the constitution only. Other parts, it is concurrent list. Okay. Now, governors are supposed to be the chancellors. What do you mean by governor as a chancellor? Chancellor, this is a British legacy. Way back in 1854, I guess. In 1854, you have this education dispatch, Wood's dispatch, right? It is during this time you've had the presidency universities or universities established in different British states, British India back then. Head of that institution was governor back then. And we have continued that legacy. Even after our independence, Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan, he insisted that we continue with this for all the states which have one university only at that point of time. And any further universities that are created through law can have their own convention. But we have continued with the convention that every university chancellor will be governor. All this is good. But now it is an issue because governor is a politically contentious post now. If you want to approve or disapprove a vice chancellor, it depends on governor. Governor will have a search committee under him or her who will decide a list of candidates eligible for vice chancellor appointment in a university. If the governor stalls that appointment procedure, a university will be not having a vice chancellor who is functionally the decision maker of that university. And this is partly because of the discretionary powers that the governor has, and this cannot continue like this. We need to bring some element of certainty. Supreme Court should intervene and legitimize this process. Now, a lot of state governments, who gave this power to the governor? Obviously the state governments through state laws. Now, a lot of state governments are removing that power away from governor. And you cannot say this is against the constitutional design, because the constitution through state acts itself said that states are okay to continue. It was a practical decision taken at that time, because if you remove the institution of governor, who will take care? At least for time being, we should allow it to run. And that is the intent at that time. Now this is a politically contentious issue. We need to fix that. So this issue needs to be fixed. And education, just like yesterday we were talking about how autonomy is important. This National Education Policy 2020 also says that political intervention should be removed. So this is a step in that direction if governor is taken away from that role. Okay? Only united action can stop the water hyacinth invasion. See, the nature of invasive alien species. They come from elsewhere, either as an animal or a plant or any living entity into a new ecosystem, dominate that ecosystem, and kill the other organisms there, or dominate them, move it out of that ecosystem. And if something happens to this species, let's say for example some fungal disease, that area will be wiped off from having any sort of flora or fauna. If there is too much, just like how I tell you that you should never put all your eggs in a single basket, you should allow biodiversity to maintain that balance in the nature. That is why invasive alien species are a threat to environment. So they need to be removed from that ecosystem. They might be invasive alien species in that ecosystem, need not be in their original ecosystem. Okay, so we need to have a set of laws for dealing with this. We are talking about one such invasive alien species which is causing a lot of headache, water hyacinth. It is impairing the productivity of lakes in areas like Kerala. Now, to deal with this, you are expected to know two laws. Does the Wildlife Protection Act and the amendment specifically mention about invasive alien species? Yes or no? The answer is both yes and no. I'll tell you why. Yes, because there is a mention of invasive alien species in the act, and measures that are to be taken and the procedure that is to be followed. Yes, there is some mention. But what about designation of those species which are invasive in nature in one ecosystem within the country, but not in any other region? Let's say for example you have this chital deer which is introduced by the British. It is not an invasive alien species in mainland, but it can be in Andaman and Nicobar. How to deal with that situation? You don't have the provisions for culling that animal there. It's a protected animal. It's not considered a vermin there. How do we deal with that? So on that front, you do not have any provision. The other area that you need to know is National Biodiversity Act. Do we have the mention of invasive alien species in Biodiversity Act? Yes or no? No. If answer is yes, what is the scope? Why have two laws for the same thing? Clear? What is the scope? So these are the kind of issues for prelims. And for mains part, what should you take away from this article? There are certain examples on how, or examples of case studies on how invasive alien species, in this case water hyacinth, can also be used as an ecological resource. For example, in some places like Odisha, it is being used as a raw material for making biodegradable baskets. Similarly, other states are also following different methods which you can pick up, experiments that can be scaled up. You can pick up and note it down in your notes. Okay? But is this a permanent fix? No. But if that species has reached a level that it cannot be eliminated, at least you need to reduce the impact. What can be done? This is the answer. Clear? Now, why is there no Palestine state? This has been discussed multiple times, but I'll quickly tell this like a story so that anyone who is not aware of the background story, you will get a brief background. If you are interested in knowing the intricate granular level details, you are free to read this. It's more like a self-explanatory thing. So I'll just give a quick recap. Okay, it all began in way back in Christ period itself. There is a very sacred place for both the Jews as well as the Muslims, Jerusalem. So this is considered to be the birthplace of Christ and also the birthplace of the religion of Old Testament, as it is called. The Jews who followed this Old Testament consider this place very sacred. Right. Now, what happened throughout history is that these people, the Jews, were constantly persecuted. So they were spread out in different directions. In 1890s, a movement started wherein some members of this Jew community started feeling that they should have their homeland back, and Zionist movement came into existence. The word Zion refers to Jerusalem. Okay? In 1917, okay, in 1917 you have Balfour Declaration. According to this declaration, British started controlling Palestine and accepted the proposition that Jews be given this land. And in 1948, after the World War, see, even before that, throughout 1940s, this Zionists had a larger control on the narrative. They wanted to have a homeland for Jews. They were mobilizing people from all over the world. All the Jews were coming back, especially in the context of the Holocaust of Germany. The so-called anti-Semitic movement, anti-Semitism, which refers to the persecution of Jews or hatred towards Jews. In the Holocaust, during the Holocaust also, this Zionist movement saw a huge rise and support, because they felt like we don't have any place to go. Everybody is hating them. So there was huge support. And in 1917 itself, this Balfour Declaration showed their intent. But there was no action from British. That has been the policy of British everywhere. Even in India's case, they promised, self-rule, Swaraj, then slowly moved towards independence, dominion status, etc. You read it in modern history. But this Zionist movement took a militant turn. Like, they started become very aggressive in the 1940s, and finally in 1948 Israel got independence. The state of Israel came into existence through the British leaving the Palestine. And it is during this time there was a lot of internal struggle. Nearly 7.5 lakh Arabs who were residing in this region had to be displaced or had to move out of that place. And that is referred to as Nakba. Okay, Nakba. Similarly, the Arabs were not happy with whatever happened, and they wanted to reclaim that land, which led to the 1967 Six-Day War, during which Israel had actually become even more powerful, and they even went to the extent of occupying a part of Sinai Peninsula, which was previously controlled by Egypt. Then what happened was a series of negotiations. Okay, so you have the so-called Oslo Accords, and even before this happened, there was something called Intifada. First Intifada, Second Intifada. There was constant uprising from Arabs through Palestine Liberalization Organization, PLO. And as late as 2006, you have had this uprising from Palestinians. Okay, so Palestinians as in Arabs, for a reclaiming the so-called Gaza and West Bank and Gaza. Now coming back to the present situation where recent conflict escalated after Hamas, an organization that is claiming to represent the Palestinians, attacked Israel with missiles. And now this has blown up into a full-blown war with Iran entering into the conflict on the side of Arabs, and Israel is trying to defend it. Instead of talking out of the situation, it is now some political commentators say that it is now escalating into a full-blown war that can bring in more foreign powers and make this a semi regional war, or maybe even a third world war. It is in this context we need a separate solution, like a pragmatic solution, like two-state solution. Why are we not having a Palestinian state? Because there is no political consensus on this issue, and that brings the issue to the close, like today's discussion to the close. End of this discussion. You need to have a flow of these events, and it is very important to know the map of this region, surrounding countries: Israel, Jordan, West Bank, Gaza, Sinai Peninsula, what all bodies you will find around that, Syria, what are water bodies you will find around that, important mountains, valleys, Golan Heights, etc. All these famous places that are in news will be asked in UPSC exam. So please go through that. Okay, that's it for the day. We'll, like we discussed, after tomorrow's first half of the discussion, which will be very quick, you will do more of prelims and mains skill building for almost 40 minutes. So whatever articles that we'll be having tomorrow will either be condensed or pushed to day after tomorrow. So please be, tomorrow as in the next session, Monday. Okay, clear? We have sessions from Monday to Friday. Please be clear about that. Monday's session generally will begin with a revision of whatever happened in the past week through questions. Clear? That is after the Monday's discussion. Monday's newspaper session will be shorter generally from now on. Instead of an elaborate discussion like this, where I'll be explaining the concepts, context, etc. If there are any pending issues, I will readjust them in the subsequent days. But most of the time will be spent for the skill building. Clear? Okay. And this is only available for offline folks, so please don't think you will be practicing it from home. Especially, I can understand for the others who are not able to access Ashok Nagar, but you guys are here, so you should definitely come and utilize this. Clear? See you.